the Grey Hat Beard podcast.
Hello and welcome to show 39 of Grey Hat Beard, the modern workplace podcast where we talk about all things Microsoft 365. I'm the Grey of Grey Hat Beard. My name's Kevin McDonnell. I'm a solutions architect at CPS and Office Apps and Services MVP.
My name is Al Eardley. I am the Hat and I am a technical architect at the Microsoft Technology Centre.
And my name is Gary Trinder. I'm a solutions architect at CPS. I'm also an office development MVP and member of the Patterns of Practices team.
Fantastic. Now, I noticed in the show notes that we've got something under events, but I'm wondering if we talk about that now, Gary. Can we share your little bit of news, I think?
Yeah, my little bit of news is that, I shall be kind of putting down my MVP badge and I'll be joining Microsoft next week. So, yes, I'll be joining Al at the mothership.
No longer the longest title in Grey Hat Beard.
Exactly. It'll be nice and short. That's the reason why I'm doing it, right? I just don't want to speak less. Yeah. So, yes. Very excited and scared in equal measure.
Congratulations, I think, and should be fun times. So all those people who sort of see the orange of Grey Hat Beard and the orange of CPS, we can firmly say that we are not a CPS podcast. We are a community podcast. We're just lazy at design, and it's easier to reuse the colours that we had on there. Did I say it out loud? So yes, fantastic news. And talking of Microsoft, we'll be covering the news here in part one. And I think the big news for last couple of weeks came out was Microsoft Inspire. And there were some really great things that came out in not massive amounts, if I'm brutally honest, but then there often isn't it in Inspire. It is the partner conference for those who haven't seen, so it's a lot about what's coming out from partners on there. But Microsoft did use it as I don't know if that's an excuse, but reason being the word I'm looking for, to announce a couple of things. If you want to see the big group of things, they do have the book of news, which we'll put in the show notes and have a look. But we'll pick up a few articles. I guess, Gary, Al, any thoughts? Did you catch many of the talks?
No, none whatsoever. My side. No, been rather busy. So yeah, it kind of slipped past, and it's kind of like, I'll just keep an eye on Twitter and see what people are talking about, which is always a great barometer if you can't actually attend all of these to see, what is actually catching people's eyes. So yeah, I mean, there were a few things that came out of it. I think one was one of the things that we asked for, didn't we, was the ability to see dynamics.
Grey Hat Beard predicts the future.
Yeah, and they turned it around really fast, though, didn't they? To be fair, I mean, what was it, the last show we were asking for it, and
I was about to say
last week.
Last show we said what would be really good. They announced the Salesforce integration. We said, well, it'd be great to see this in Dynamics. Boom. So, what are we asking for next week? Free Surface hubs for all in the office, or a reduction in license cost?
Again, that happened last time. That's not going to happen twice in a row.
As well, things not to be renamed in 6 months. How about that?
Oh, that keeps us on our toes, though, doesn't it? To be fair.
Yeah, that is a good point. But yeah, I've having jokes about that. What I really liked about the Dynamics integration was not just that you've got that integration, but they were reducing or they were removing the need for additional licensing costs. So if you've got that Teams license, you get now I looked into this, it's a team member equivalent license for Dynamics. So which I know, Al, you know a little bit more about Dynamics, but effectively gives you like a read-only access to the sales type content.
Yeah, so and it's read-only, and it's one of the things they've done with Project for the Web as well, is to give Office 365 users read access. So you could surface information, but you may not be managing that information. So I think there's a move towards enabling the visibility of information, even if you can't read it, which I think it's worthwhile. It really makes a big difference, because it just makes all of that information accessible in one location without necessarily the tricky conversations around licensing. And the sales team, whoever's using Dynamics, field service, they will be using it, but others, they often want to see it. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense what they've done there.
I was trying to see a link. None of these pictures are particularly going to do it justice, so I hope people can see it slightly here. But it means you can kind of mention organisations, you can mention opportunities, leads, and see more details about them, which I think be really useful. Be interesting, because one of the things I've been looking at recently is if you think about Viva Topics, and actually we haven't talked about what we're going to talk about in part 2, but we'll cover that a bit later. But in Viva Topics, you want to talk about organizations and have a central place to go, and actually your CRM is usually the place where you have all the information about an organization. And from what I could see from the teams of there, it's going to be that ability to kind of show tags and provide links easily from within teams to those organizations. So when you mention them, you can kind of auto tag them from the bits I saw. I'm looking at Al's face. He's trying to work out if he's going to say no, you've completely misdone that. But
no, I mean, I think the tagging though is the tagging and the ability to reference things in Teams chats is a growing capability. We've seen it come through with lists as well, where you can have a conversation in the channel chat around an item that's in that particular site, which is, I think it makes it much more effective. It's a much stronger integration when you have that. And when you think about when you're all the places that you can mention, if you can mention it and contextually it's going to go into the right location, that's got to be worthwhile, hasn't it? I mean, it's
absolutely
a great idea to have all of that in there so that it's easy to actually draw people's attention to where their attention needs to be.
Yeah, I think, like I say, it's the communications from both sides, right? It's like there's the Dynamics. You're in Dynamics, you can communicate using the Teams facility. You're in Teams, you can expose that Dynamics information as a card quite easily, and work through things as a team, and kind of having that communication layer. But yeah, it's quite interesting. It's just I think, like we said before, it'd be really nice if this all integrated, because we look at them as becoming part of one ecosystem, right? But they're still services that are a bit separate. It's a little bit clunky to just throw a link in there.
I think despite the Power Platform often being the kind of common theme between the two, there's very little between the sort of Microsoft 365 collaboration productivity areas and the Dynamics. I know occasionally Dynamics uses SharePoint to store documents, but it's not that much more. So I think the more integration you get, the better.
Yeah, and
nice.
like the key thing is context. Like I love using the Azure Boards app in a similar way that people could use this Dynamics app of just like, you've got your little app at the bottom, you search for it, search for whatever opportunity we want to discuss with someone, and bang, put that in the message, and you're saving that other person time to, actually I've got to click on that link, I've got to then go in and find it out. Well, actually, is it an opportunity that we're talking about that is active, or has it been sat there for whatever amount of time? You get that instant information, and then you can make the best decision, right, about, well, do I actually respond to that straight away, or actually is it is it burning, or is it something that's quite cold? But by giving people all that information up front, you're helping them make a better decision.
I do still think it's interesting that they decided to announce Salesforce first before Dynamics. Now, obviously, they had a big conference. It was a good chance to announce it's a big thing. They had that licensing benefit. But I think it's also a good message to say that Teams is the platform. It's not just for Microsoft stuff. It's for anything. You can build other things into there. You can get the same integration with your own apps, regardless. And I think we'll come on to a little bit later more about the apps and building things into Teams and abilities from there. But it's a platform. It's not just get Dynamics and Teams. It's you can bring the best things into there. And I think it's a good message.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's the let's say the new Microsoft, right? It's like we know that you're using these services and applications. We're not saying you have to go for a whole migration to jump into Dynamics to use this piece of software. No, it's actually, bring it in, and there's the apps for you to use. You don't have to change. And I think that's what Teams has to be, for it to be that workspace. Whether you're using Microsoft applications or let's say, you can argue competitor applications,
inferior products.
Yeah. But
that's what you've got to say now, Gary. These are the kind of things you've got to get into the conversations.
I've got to learn, haven't I? Yeah. But yeah, I think it's a distinct change, I think, by putting a quite a high profile competitor first.
I don't know whether it's a distinct change. It's just continuing. We've had announcements on Android and iOS. We've had those features going into those platforms before they come to Windows at times. We've had all of the connectors in Flow. The Power Platform has just been, constructed with the concept that it's an orchestration tool when it looks at Power Automate. So I think Teams, we've had all of those apps, we've had the bots, we've had all the add-ins for a long, long time. It's kind of more promoting that those first-party applications, the big ones that may have been seen as a competitor, are actually in the fold, as opposed to the friendly applications created by all the partners and the Microsoft fanboys. They've always been there, but now these are more of the competitors, and I think that's where the slight difference is. It's an acknowledgement that actually people don't have to move off those competitor platforms, but they are equally first class in terms of their integration within the platform.
Yeah,
which I think brings it neatly onto the next big announcement. I'll debate the big in a sec, but the big highlight that they talked about was the Microsoft Viva integrations, where it's industry leaders or your own in-house team or some great consultant and Microsoft partners can build these things as well. That you can connect. So things like Workday, ServiceNow, Cornerstone, Headspace, Coursera, Pluralsight, all being connected with Viva, which I think is exactly what you were saying, Alex. These big organizations and making those available, which I thought was great. What I didn't like so much is this was pretty much the Viva announcement. I think certainly from the keynote, I know, Gary, you and I were kind of keeping an eye on the keynote at the same time, and they kind of went on to big Viva news, and it was like 21 partners. I was like, oh, wow, what's going to be next? And they moved on to the next thing. So I was a little disappointed that we didn't get any more Viva updates coming through. I think some smaller ones came through in terms of licensing. So they got the simplified licensing model. So obviously Viva Connections is still included in your current Microsoft 365 licenses, but then Insights, Learning, and what's the other one, Topics, are now going to be $4 per user per month per app. Obviously, depending on your location, and I'm sure there's discounts that could be argued with, but as a sort of simplified, it's $4. Whichever one of those ones you want, $4. Want another one, $4 on there. So I would love to see a kind of unified one and a slight reduction in that, but nice to see that they've got that simplified view of things.
I think the integrations here are really important though, because it will bring Viva to life by having those integrations, and a lot of organizations are going to suddenly look at this completely differently and go, oh, okay, we can start to use our existing things now, and that will be an enabler for a lot of organizations. I think it will remove that need for custom development on day one, and for a lot of organizations will still need that, but I think this is a real enabler.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm chuckling to myself because I stopped sharing and hadn't noticed. So for those watching on YouTube, we were showing the sort of key ones. They talked about Workday, SAP Success Factors and others, and there's a button that says see more. So I think the first one there's 12, so it must be another 9 in the bottom part, which it does put there. And I noticed down the bottoms they had LinkedIn Learning, which is owned by Microsoft, and Glint, which is owned by LinkedIn, which is owned by Microsoft. the Josh Bersin Academy, and I know Josh Bersin's been working very closely with Microsoft, so I can see why they decided to put those ones a little bit further down on the article than they did on the main bit. But I mean, it's some really great organisations in there. So things like Udacity, which I've used before, and I can't remember where it was now, but I have good memories of that on there. But yeah, I agree. I think that integration that we're seeing with other things is impressive. Other big news, jumping back to that one, is the new era of hybrid personal computing, the Windows 365 Cloud PC. So effectively, you can have Windows 365 there in the cloud, which you've never been able to do before, unless you had a Azure Virtual Desktop. And other things there. And we were talking a little bit about the show because as a grand name, Windows 365 is a great brand. I think it's got that 365, it's got that Windows. It's a natural thing to bring together. Trying to pin down how this is different to what's already been available. For me personally, I found it a little bit tricky because I like the idea, but I know Azure Virtual Desktop was available, but I think there are some details that seem a little bit low level, but are actually quite important. I know we were talking a bit about it, and there's a great article from GetNerd.io, talking about the comparisons. Let me see if I can zoom, and I'll go up to the higher summary ones that talked about the difference between the current Azure Virtual Desktop and what it is, and it was the top one that I think covered it. So having the Microsoft managed, basically for Windows 365, Microsoft will manage the full desktop. If you use Azure Virtual Desktop, it's like having a bit of kit that's in a data center, but you still own and run that. With Windows 365 entirely with Microsoft.
SaaS, isn't it?
Yeah. It's operating system as a service.
Yeah, I guess it is down to that sort of level.
Yeah.
I think from what I could see, because I actually looked at running the Azure Virtual Desktop off my subscription as a kind of way of having a more powerful dev machine that I could do for occasional things, and you couldn't really do it because you had to have at least 100 machines from it, so it was really targeted towards enterprises. I get the feeling the Windows 365, there's the Enterprise and Business Edition. The business will allow more of those kind of lower level pieces on there. I think there were some other bits further down. Great article, this one, in terms of covering everything. In terms of summarising, maybe not quite so good on there. I think there were different bits. And certainly for me, I still couldn't say 100%. I understand the differences between the two. It seems fairly detailed level on there. I think your IaaS versus SaaS is exactly the right summary for it, Al.
And I think it'll be one of those things that as soon as we get our hands on it, then we'll be able to play with it and see the difference. But certainly, I think it did raise some questions for me when I kind of thought, as a consultant traveling, it might not work in all situations. If you think about workers who are at home, having a desktop that they can just stream, there's a lot of benefits to that, rather than setting up virtual desktop environments where you're managing the OS and the scaling and the performance and all of that. And I can see how this would fit a lot of organizations for a lot of users who, they just need a desk. They need to either be at home or, in an office somewhere with Wi-Fi. Whereas maybe those road warriors, this isn't going to work quite so well. Airplane mode, I'd imagine, is not going to cut it, is it? Or trains. So I think there's going to be different scenarios where this will really work well. But certainly, those desk-based users, wherever they may be, at home, in a coffee shop, in the office, this could work really well for them.
Yeah, I agree on that. It's one of those. I think when I first saw it, it was like, oh, it's really impressive. It's an impressive bit of technology. Not something that is kind of really new because there's the virtual desktops anyway. So it's like it's just a different spin on it. And like I say, it's Microsoft taking that kind paying away from you managing it effectively. I think that's the key thing here. It's another managed service, right?
Yep.
And to a lot of organizations that will appeal as well. Maybe organizations that are, growing, they want to expand that capability and do it in a way that's kind of temporary as well, and scale up, scale down. It gives you that way in, I think, rather than like, Kev, you were saying you've got to hit a certain number of desktops for it to become, cost effective. If you remove those barriers, people are going to start moving across to use that technology. And then as companies grow, they've got somewhere to start and somewhere to end up potentially. So yeah, that's good. Although it will confuse people now, because there's Office 365, Microsoft 365, Windows 365,
Dynamics 365.
Yeah, it's like, everything's going to be 365.
Do we not have Viva 365 yet?
Next year.
I'm going to put an awful dad joke in here. Well, I just have Meetings 365. That's what it feels like.
Oh,
hold on.
Right, can we leave now?
Yeah. I need to leave because having mocked you, Al, about your headphones running out of battery, mine have just run out of battery. So I'm getting hit by the karma bug tonight. I know my wired ones aren't working either. So hopefully I'm not giving too much
You're
feedback.
just working on your lip reading, are you?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's what it is. And I guess with Windows 365, lovely cloud solution. Did it catch either of you by surprise? SharePoint subscription?
Just very quickly before we go on to that, one thing I found very interesting from the keynotes, one of the things they were talking about Windows 365, and they give the example of a very remote town or village in now I can't remember, it's either in Canada or Alaska, somewhere very North America. And how it would make such a difference for them for Windows 365, because they wouldn't have to wait for parts to be delivered and wait for new PCs. They could just click and upgrade. And I was kind of thinking that sounds great, but surely then you're going to have more bandwidth. And do they just have great bandwidth? And I found that an intriguing example, because they never really covered on that fact or brought from it. But it'd be interesting, what are the bandwidth requirements for this? Will this work in more remote areas? I know we were talking about in the show, and from the things you'll be able to, it's HTML based, so you'll be able to access on all the different devices, but will it be fairly lightweight as well? So it'd be intriguing to know with that as well. But yes, Al, I'm guessing you're getting hungry and pushing us through the news very rapidly, which I wholeheartedly endorse. And you were talking about the new SharePoint.
Yeah, it took me by surprise that there was even a SharePoint still going on-prem. It's been so long since anybody's mentioned SharePoint on-prem, but it did kind of surprise me, because I guess that the scenarios where SharePoint has been on-prem over the last 5 or 6 years that I've worked with have been secure locations where it's been, environments that maybe are isolated from the internet and, are standalone. And the new SharePoint subscription edition seems to not stick with that model, which kind of made me wonder just how many people are actually still using SharePoint Server on-prem and are looking to actually upgrade from, well, it said 16 or 19, and then it mentioned Windows Server 2022, which again I was just kind of like, I think the last Windows Server edition I looked at was 2016. So it just felt like I kind of had blocked out SharePoint Server, mostly for good reason. But
I think I'm going to counter this slightly, purely because I don't think Microsoft is doing this because they want to. I think it's probably the last thing they want to do. It will make their life a lot easier to move to online. And that means there is still an awful lot of demand for an on-premise SharePoint. Do I think it's valid demand? Do I think that the number of use cases warrants a whole new version? Maybe not, but they are obviously, Microsoft doesn't do things because it wants to. Very often it does it because they are getting that demand and it must be there.
Absolutely, but I think that's the thing. If I would have expected the demand to be for isolated, secure installations that are a step away from the internet.
Yeah.
And that's where the
But then-
subscription, constant,
I think
continuous
the-
update, and the
I
sort
think
of
the
some of the
continuous update, to me, that's not, it's always connected. You're always, I know it is, but it's less about that. It's more that they're not going to be having a new version every 3 years. It means that this is now the version, and they will roll out updates to it on a more regular basis, and that you will have control over when you can install that. So I don't see it being massively different, and I'm sure there will still end up being versions that people don't bother upgrading and they're several years out of date, and they shouldn't. But they're trying to encourage people to update on a more frequent basis, and make it less painful.
Yeah.
I hope.
Yeah, I was going to say it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see what the uptake is of this in terms of those scenarios.
I mean, the response, I saw this on Twitter and it came from left field. I was like, what? But the reaction was actually really positive. Lots of people seem to be, we're loving this. This is great. Can't wait to kind of try it out. But yeah, I was kind of a bit. The updates that you get, modern authentication, a few compliance controls in there, but then you look at it as a platform and it's still going to be like 2019 with a couple of extra bits in there. I don't see any enhancements to the development story in this new version. I don't think that's going to change. It's going to be the same as 2019. You're going to be SharePoint framework, 1.4, which is a big way back now. When you look at where we are with SharePoint Online, extensibility, and now Teams extensibility as well. I wouldn't expect any changes to be seen, but Microsoft have committed to the server products in the past. So I think it's just because we're just not looking maybe at the server products anymore, that it has just kind of come as a bit of a surprise. But actually, they have said in the past, and they've come forward with new updates to say, we're still committed.
I think the other thing is, by changing that name to not have a year in it, it stops people asking the questions, when is the next version going to come out? And the answer is, it's not. It's there. It will just be kept alive like this.
Windows 10 didn't have a year in it.
Yeah, that was supposed to be the last one as well.
No comment. And it did make me laugh, because you talked about no updates, but Gary, there is the enhanced people picker for modern authentication. Exciting. Oh, okay. I mean, as highlights go, I did find that as a strange one to pull out, but as I say, I refuse to believe that Microsoft doesn't do this for a reason, and the reason is they get demand. And I know the number of people running conferences who get the question, but what about on-premise? Will it work with that? And I think more and more the answer is no. But here is something that they're keeping a large, but a decent chunk of people who still need that on-prem version for whatever reason, and it's there.
But then, the things you've talked about, like, the new people picker, it's using modern authentication, which for me means it's just an extra hook into, Office 365. It's a hybrid scenario, right? You're not just going to run this version of SharePoint and not have anything else, because a lot of these features you're not going to gain from it, because, you're not able to use, your connectivity with SharePoint Online. It's one of those things, I think, from 2016 onwards, it's almost like the stripping down of the server product to move you online. And now it's like, if you are staying online, you're just going to get the bare minimum. And, like Al said, it's like your use case becomes then very specific as to why that exists, as opposed to moving stuff into SharePoint Online. And that might be, whatever regulatory requirements you have potentially that stops you from moving particular content into the cloud.
So here's a wrap-up question. Actually, I know the SharePoint server wasn't from Inspire, but a wrap-up question for Inspire. And I'm dropping this on you both without warning you beforehand, so apologies. But what did you see from partners that came out from Inspire? Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it?
I wasn't really watching very much of it, so
Yeah.
not a lot.
Yeah, but
Well, I think,
but usually, you get a buzz from conferences, and I think you talked about Al earlier, the sort of buzz you get around Twitter of the announcements. It does. One of the things I find from the online conferences is I still don't get that kind of interest from third parties. Sorry, not from them, but the stuff that they're announcing just doesn't seem to get the same attention as you would when you see things on the floor and see announcements of new versions of their products. Just doesn't seem to come across as well virtually. I
think
find myself a bit unfair.
Yeah, Inspire is quite a different type of conference. It is for partners, so it is that partner ecosystem to give, you get the partner awards, the celebration of that partner ecosystem, the promotion of that partner ecosystem, as opposed to expecting big announcements, and any announcements do tend to be geared towards how those partners can engage with Microsoft and what they can, what they can do. So I think there's probably a lot that's been missed out, probably potentially more so from Inspire, in terms of that networking and seeing what partners do and understanding where they fit in, to what is a very, very large ecosystem. And that's, I think, one of the things that you really don't see very much for Inspire, because Inspire, when it was in person, you never used to see that much come out of it, other than, from the marketing organizations for partners.
Right.
But you'd see some announcements, but not the same scale. At least that's always been my perception. Maybe I've just been more interested in the technical side of things anyway. But that's always been my perception, that it's more of a sales and marketing and networking experience for partners to get to know Microsoft.
Right. Okay. Rather than to share what they've been up to. And I know Satya in the keynote sort of did highlight some of the great work that partners were doing, which off the top of my head I can't remember. But there was some very good stuff there. So do go back and have a look.
The one thing which will stick in the memory is the HoloLens meeting. With which fantastic piece of technology, and the use case was great. Actually having actually sat across a desk and having the HoloLens on, you can see the person at the other side of the desk. But yeah, I said to Kev afterwards, it felt a bit Lawnmower Man. With I mean, obviously, we're early days, and I'm sure it'll get better. But the camera angle of the demo didn't do the lady who was at the other side of the table much justice, really, because you could only see the kind of top half, so it was like floating body on top of a chair, and then you couldn't see anything underneath, which looked a bit strange from certain angles. But technology was cool, but
it was interesting because the mesh is obviously building on what Alt VR has of that kind of floating body. But usually, for those who haven't seen Alt VR, it kind of gives you a cartoony look to the face. I know we've talked about it before, but this new mesh version seemed to be taking the same thing and then trying to make it more realistic. And your description of Lawnmower Man was absolutely perfect, because it looked like that. And I think everyone wants that ability to have that kind of real conversation face to face, and to be able to use glasses at a cost effective way that do that. But it didn't look like it to me. I agree.
Yeah. It was interesting, but I mean the presentation was quite interesting as well. Like your 3D models, you're able to share those and kind of look at them on an actual table, like virtually. I think it's lots of different technologies kind of combining to show that demo, and I think in another couple of years' time, maybe we're talking about going, wow, look how far it's come from that first demo. So, and I get that's what Inspire is about, right? Really, isn't it? It's like, this is cutting edge stuff, and we're trying to build these scenarios and use cases for businesses.
So, Gary, are you saying that they put that awful video up to inspire people to do better? Was that the push there?
Quite possibly. Why not? Always room for improvement, right?
So moving on from Inspire, there was a couple of other Teams related news that came out. One that, again, talking about the partners, I thought was an interesting article we'll put in the show notes from Accenture, basically saying they're going all in with Teams, and not just using Teams, but bringing data, making use of the apps. They're talking about having personal apps, building their own tab apps, bots, meeting extensions, messaging extensions in there, making full use of Viva. bringing in things because they use ServiceNow, Salesforce, Workday. This is kind of nothing new. This is what Microsoft's been trying to encourage people to do. But here is Accenture, another big consulting, saying, yeah, we're doing this. We're bringing in these power apps. We're empowering everyone to make the difference and build this as part of it. I thought it was really interesting to see them promote that and talk about that a lot as well. I have to say, I've been trying to build a meeting app recently for our happy hour etiquette. Yeah, mixed experience, it's fair to say. The first time it worked perfectly, and then I tried to run it again and it just wouldn't work and just seems to stop there. So I'm kind of hoping it's very early days, because I think for me, I know we've talked about hybrid, and I think we've got a couple of news things. That ability to create apps that people can interact with from their own devices during meetings, whether they're in the office or whether they're online, has a huge amount of potential. So I hope it is good to see big organizations like Accenture going all in this, because they will surface and hit the problems and make it easier for many others as well. Al, you saw there was the general availability for links within
Safely.
Teams.
Yeah, I thought this was already out there. But yeah, Microsoft Defender for Office, the ability to do the same thing that it does for Outlook, check and see whether a link is safe before you click on it, and to do that in Teams as well, which I think, anything to reduce the exposure to accidentally clicking on something is good. And yeah, coming into Teams. So if you paste a link into a chat or into a Teams chat, channel chat, then it will check it and say, is this on our list of things to watch out for? Yes, okay, in which case we'll put up a message saying, yep, you can't click on that. So yeah, it's just one more step to making things safer for people and reducing that exposure to the risk, which is great. I think that's something that, as I say, I thought it was there, but it is now, so that's good.
Yeah, which is good. And great to see. Of course, this is all about hybrid, because everything's about hybrid at the moment. But
there is nothing else in the world other than the whole theme of hybrid, really.
And I mock it. I do think it's important. I just like mocking marketing. There we go, marketing. There's your new word.
Marketing.
For today, because hybrid does seem to be everywhere, and it's one of those ones like DevOps and Agile before, that the reality underneath it is really important. Trying to work out what each independent area actually means by hybrid is the challenge. Other kind of Teams related news, and I don't know if you saw this, Gary, but Electron put out a blog post. Now, when Windows 11, which I haven't seen anyone quote as the last version of Windows, thankfully, but when Windows was 11 was announced, the Teams engineering team also said that we're going to be rebuilding the Teams architecture, and it was going to use half their memory. And they said they were moving from Electron to WebView 2. And I thought it was very interesting that Electron have come back with this blog post talking about the architecture. Now, it is definitely one for the techies and the devs on there, around the architecture of the two. And to cut a long story short, please do read it. We'll put it in the show notes on there. But to cut a long story short, they're saying actually there's not much difference, and that neither has a big impact on memory. What does is the JavaScript framework and the JavaScript libraries used. And I know a lot of people have jumped on the WebView 2. I know there's lots of people who badmouth Electron with things like Slack and others who use that, who are notorious memory hogs. It seems to be saying from this that actually it's the JavaScript thing. And I know that they're moving teams from, I think it's Angular JS to React. I'm pausing there because I can't remember if it's Angular or Angular JS. I'm sure I read somewhere it was the JS on there. And yeah, it's good to see Electron fighting back a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, the good news is, right, they know that there's a problem and they're trying to solve it. Whether, like you say, it ends up being exactly the same, which could well be. I hope not. But yeah, it's interesting for the level of detail that they do go into of that. Actually, it's not just comparing the two. There's so many different variables in there. Teams will be made up of God knows how many different libraries. It's JavaScript after all, so there's probably probably about 50 odd packages that this thing uses across the board, or maybe even more. So yeah,
I think the reason I particularly like this article is it's a good reminder of not going, Electron's rubbish, let's use something else. You kind of need to know what you're looking at if you're looking to improve performance. So don't just go on the big names.
Yeah, and I mean, as much as teams can be slow and things, I mean, it is still impressive piece of software, right, for what it does and what it connects to. So things are going to get better. Great. I think you've been using Teams for long enough that it's not got to a point of going, oh my god, this is unusable. But I'm sure that other people have different opinions as well. So yeah, everyone's got an opinion, right?
as with every platform, there are so many variables in terms of what's added into it. That meeting app that you're building, that could be a terrible hog of memory just because it's coded in a certain way.
You're trying to say something now.
Rude.
Thankfully, I'm keeping it JavaScript light and it's all server side, so it'll just be my costs that go up instead.
Yeah, but I mean, this is the thing, though, isn't it? There's so many decisions about how you put the architecture of an app together, then how you present it, let alone just rendering it in Teams and video, sounds, everything that is there, notifications, polling for it. There's so much that's going on. So yeah, it is an impressive app, and it's one that we're all very dependent on now and love very deep.
And you've got to remember trying to have the consistency as well between the desktop client and then the web client as well. There's that extra bit on there. So yeah.
I mean, I do notice that some of us love Teams so much that they even have a Blurple T-shirt. Isn't that right, Gary?
I don't know what you mean. Yeah. What's worse, though, I've got two.
Is one in WebView 2 and one in Electron, or? Right, moving on quickly. On to compliance news, and now I saw this one. Microsoft acquires CloudKnox Security to offer unified privileged access and cloud entitlement management. And I will be honest, Al, I saw the headline, went, oh, that's interesting, and stopped there. So I don't know if you have any additional insight into what this will bring.
For me, this is again Microsoft's view that they are not the only cloud. This is entitlement management and being able to package up a set of permissions to applications or resources within your environment is really powerful, really useful. But buying somebody, which is what Microsoft have done with CloudKnox, is basically going to enable them to do that across different clouds. Which I think, again, is centralizing things like Azure Arc, being able to say, actually, you don't have to go to all these management consoles for different platforms. We can start to actually pull it together. And so you've got a single place where you can start to look at managing whatever platform you might be using, whatever cloud you might be using. I think is really, it states their intent, that they are not going to be just limited to their own cloud or their own clouds. And I thought that's why this is really interesting, because they then talk about a cloud infrastructure entitlement management tool, which it starts to be a whole new paradigm of, well, actually we can manage everything from one place.
And I do notice in the blog they did say that it was about hybrid work as well. So getting. Did
they mention hybrid? Did you just do a search for the word hybrid? Because obviously that's going to be there. But yeah, I mean, I think it's just one of those things that's showing intent, and we'll see where it comes in. A lot of the technologies that emerge in the Microsoft stack for security and compliance are the result of these acquisitions, where they're buying a tool that works really well and then integrating it really well into the stack that they've already got. So yeah, I was quite interested to see this and see how this will pan out.
It's always interesting with these acquisitions, how much you see and how much just suddenly appears and improves, and then you go, oh, I wonder if that was related to that. And I think it's nice. Shouldn't really matter.
I think sometimes it does take a while for them to be integrated in.
Yeah.
And sometimes you see them straight away. But
Yeah.
I wasn't going to mention that, but yeah. But yeah, and so hopefully, this won't take too long. Give it a year, and we might be talking about how we can manage entitlements across, GCP, AWS, and any other cloud that might be out there.
Very interesting. There was another one you put in there: ensure compliance using separation of duties checks in access requests. Sorry, separation of duties checks in access. I can't work out how.
Yeah,
this is
so essentially,
checks what this in access request or checks in access request.
So this is basically it's entitlements again. So it's basically enhancing the entitlements that are in
they have
your
integrated
Active Directory. Absolutely, yeah. No, just mentioned it and now it's there. But this is basically saying, if you say you are in sales and you have regulation that says if you're in sales you can't make changes in the accounting system at the back end. This can say, well, okay, you've got all the accounting permissions in one entitlement and you've got all the sales permissions in another entitlement. If you are granted one of those, you can't be granted the other one. So it's separating out and making sure that you can't actually get too many permissions, which for regulated industries, that separation of interests is a really powerful capability. So that's essentially what this one's doing.
That's interesting.
Which is, I mean, it's making that admin stuff easier. It's making it easier to say, we don't want you to have both of those. We don't want you to be the poacher and the gamekeeper. You can just be one or the other.
Easier to demonstrate. And I know that, having come from financial services, that, and I hope there's a better word for it now, but the sort of Chinese walls that need to be put in place to, literally people could not go in different rooms if there were similar roles. They shouldn't be seen to be talking to each other, and trying to implement that was
information barriers.
Information barriers. Thank you very much. You can tell I haven't touched that word for a little while.
But yeah, I mean, it's
absolutely key.
Yeah. So there's just another enhancement that will be really, really useful.
And I've lost the next article. But there we go. Yeah, there was a form you had.
So the next,
put a link in.
Yeah. So the next one. So this is compliance related. So within the compliance, there's multiple ways for us to identify information that needs to be protected. So whether that's to apply sensitivity labels or DLP, and one of those is classifiers, trainable classifiers, which is a bit like SharePoint syntax. It looks for the pattern in the document, or what type of document it is, rather than a specific combination of characters like a regular expression. And Erica Toll, who's one of the program managers looking after this, has put out a link. So if there are needs for new types of classifier, then that's what they're asking for now, which is great because they've got 5 classifiers in there, things like source code, resume, profanity and harassment, things like that. And they're asking for ideas for other.
Which can often go together. Yeah, all 4 of those.
Absolutely, yeah.
Especially source code and profanity.
Source code and profanity definitely go together, don't they? Yeah.
We're still talking about your code. Come on.
I write it, Gary reviews it. There's the profanity.
There's the profanity, yeah. Oh, why is he allowed to write code still?
Oh, did I not go on mute? Oh, sorry.
I have told you, Gary, that code today was not mine. That was inherited.
So these classifiers, any ideas for new classifiers, which is really great because, everything that can make life easier to identify content and apply the right security controls is a bonus for us, really.
But I think this is great, and one of the things I've loved about becoming an MVP is that opportunity to kind of share back what's happening and also see what's happening. And this is a great way for MVPs and non-MVPs to be able to share that, get those things into Microsoft because they do listen. Which again, coming back to why we still have an on-premises SharePoint, Microsoft does listen to the demands from people. So that was good. Right, so I'm going to try and rock it on to the last one. And I realise I haven't clicked on this link. So, this is another the latest Work Lab post.
So we had to finish with something hybrid, didn't we? But this one's quite an interesting one. So this is from Jared Spratero, and this one is about the concept of place and space. and a space being the physical space that you're in, but a place being a place to work. So, any space could be a place to work, and a place could be a digital place where we all come together to actually work. Rather, I can see Kevin kind of looking a little.
I'm getting dizzy now.
His head is blown now. Yeah. But yeah, it's just I hadn't been onto Work Lab for a while, and it was just a really interesting read around this whole concept of what we should be aspiring to is not necessarily looking at the physical, but actually the digital, and making sure that that's actually something that we're looking at. The place is. They talked about the cloud PC in there. That's the place. Doesn't matter what space you're in, you could still get to it. It's quite an interesting, just slightly different way just to look at, when we're talking about hybrids, to frame that hybrid conversation slightly differently.
I've heard other conversations before. So at one of my previous organizations, they were setting up an agile area, and they wanted to ensure that everything about the physical space and the digital tools and their internal digital workplace, they wanted to try and get common themes there. So where they had areas which would be the working area and areas which would be the kind of meeting space, collaborative area, they tried to replicate the names and feel for that within the kind of online spaces as well, to get that commonality between them. So it felt like a place, whether it was exactly what you were saying, how the digital or the physical space had those similarities. And it's interesting. It's funny, one of my grumbles about Work Lab is I haven't found a way that you can subscribe to it to get notified of new articles coming out. It'd be really nice to have that.
And they don't tell you when they were published, so you don't know how out of date you are at saying, "Oh, this is new."
Oh yes, I'd noticed that. Interesting. Yeah, and the only reason is because I think it's brilliant. I think the articles on that Work Lab site, I know we've talked about a lot here, are absolutely great at sort of getting the why as well as the what.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. It's taking those kind of concepts that people have been looking at for a while, especially with companies going, we want people to be productive. So you look at, the layouts of buildings, and, we need areas where people are going to literally bump into each other for those, kind of like moments of inspiration or creativity or whatever. But then you've got the areas that you need to focus and maybe keep quiet, but the areas then are more open, and the open working spaces. And it's kind of like all that's kind of disappeared with everyone just working from home. So how do you, either recreate that through, different working habits, or, things like the breakout rooms like we saw in Teams, right? That's another kind of way of going, hang on, we're using the technology in a digital space in an appropriate way to bring people together to generate ideas, but then, come back to a wider group, or go off by yourself for a while and have that time to focus before you come back to the group as well.
It's funny, we were talking last week's retrospective about a friend who I knew was a biochemist, and I was talking about that sort of chance bumping together. I actually stayed with them at the weekend. Went to Latu Festival. We were chatting yesterday morning, and I mentioned that they had them on there, and it triggered us a conversation because her husband's the Nature Ecology and Evolution editor on there. So it gets a lot of kind of thing. And it got us talking about how DeepMind has just come up with a way of modeling proteins and published and open source all the elements. And so that kind of colliding together of sort of how proteins are modeled with that capabilities of machine learning and AI to actually solve those things that wouldn't naturally have fitted together in the past. It sort of came in with that same thing of bumping into each other and getting to know, and the fact that was a physical conversation we had. And I might try and dig out the link for that and put that in the show notes, because it was very, very interesting on there and got me thinking. But I will move on, and we'll just wrap up with a few events. So we are sort of getting into the summer season, so there's not too many events. I did put a blog post out, so anyone who's seen my talk around Microsoft Search, one of the things I've had within there is trying to recreate that, because my partner Demo Tenant runs out every 90 days, and I've actually created a set of sample data. So I've now published that out, and you can get that within the GitHub, including a Visio file. So anyone who wants to have a look at the floor plans capability, it's got a Visio, and I'll have a blog soon on how to actually create that Visio as well. So do have a look at that. Al, you've got this week. the next user security and compliance user group.
We do indeed. Yep. So we've got Chris Hord about Teams meetings and the retention of Teams meetings, and Dwayne Natick about Azure Security Center. So it should be a good session.
Yeah.
So Wednesday this week, which is the 28th at 6 o'clock UK time, which is UTC +1.
Fantastic. And then I know we talk about South Coast Summit every week and Commsverse every week, which I will put on there because they're both going to be great events, but particularly South Coast Summit for anyone who's a speaker, because the call for speakers, which appears not to be on that link, must be further down. There we go, just below there. Call for speakers closes on the 31st of July, so make sure you get things in there. And also, I'm going to put a shout out to all the pre-summit workshops that have got going on. So please do register for those. I think they are starting to pick up some interest. Everyone's going, yes, do you know, I think this event might actually happen. So people are not getting scared off by their rocketing numbers, which are coming down again, and are getting excited about it. So do register and make sure you get to your place before they will disappear. Otherwise, I think that's it for part 1, and part 2 we're going to be going into talking about how you can use Microsoft Viva to build habits, practices and rituals. Now, I mentioned I was at the Latitude Festival at the weekend, and while I was there, the WhatsApp group between the three of us was pinging left, right and centre as Gary and Al were watching lots of videos and sharing lots of things between what's habits, practices and rituals. And I thought that looks really interesting, but I've got beer and music, so I'll come back and read that, and I haven't had a chance. So this is going to be new to me as well. So come and find out with me how you can build these things and what is a habit, practice or ritual. And no, we are not talking about the sacrifices that we do to the demo gods before any talks. This case is probably I'm looking at Al's face and he's thinking, yeah, I might do.
I was going to say that's the only ritual we're going to talk about, isn't it?
But
it doesn't.
Sorry, Gary, go.
I was to say, it doesn't involve standing around in a circle chanting Microsoft. Although it can if you really want.
I did see Pete Rising saying how Steve Ballmer was his favourite, and he shared the picture of Steve jumping around the stage. And I did ask if that's how he started just before every podcast. So I know one of his rituals is to do that. But yeah, do come and join us, and we'll be chatting about that. If you're just stumbled across us, do go and hit subscribe. Go and find your favourite podcast provider. Do go and have a look on YouTube. And we don't say this enough, but drop us a comment. Let us know what you think. If you hate it, that's fine, but say why. Give us some details and we can think about that a little bit. Do give us a reviews. We'd love to start to see some reviews on there. So I'm going to talk like a funny YouTuber and go smash that subscribe button. And that's the last time I'm going to do that. Anyway, thank you very much. We will see you in part 2 in a week's time. Bye-bye.